Welcome to the show. We are the Authentics.
I'm Jay Binkowitz, and we're ready to dive in to some good conversation.
I'm Dr. Essence Johnson, and this is The Authentics.
Hello, eye care peeps. Welcome to the first ever live stream of The Authentics. This is a collective of experienced eye care industry people looking to bring genuine, thoughtful conversations to our colleagues. Before we get started, I want to make a special thank you to Steve and Daniel at Eye Care Pro for helping The Authentics with incredible support, from building our logo to our website and so much more that you've done for us. Your commitment of time is very appreciated. To the live audience, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you're welcome to engage with us by posting comments. The comments will come through to our system. Keep them clean, keep them short. We'll monitor those for feedback and any points that might need to be addressed. Team, welcome, all of you.
Hey,
Hi.
Good to be here.
Good to be here.
Appreciate it. We're sort of like one of those TV talk shows where sometimes all of us will be here and sometimes a few of us won't. And this might even be a case where one of the Authentics comes in after the beginning of the show, which is totally cool. We're going to make this casual. We're going to make it authentic, to use the title. This episode is titled, "Is the Time and Money for Today's OD Degree a Worthwhile Investment?" And our aim hasn't been to just discuss this from the prospective optometry students' viewpoint. It's a discussion that we think needs to be had by the entire industry. So with that, what I want to do is start with a student perspective. I've got a video perspective from one of our special contributors that I think will participate with us from over time. Her name is Dr. Araba Otu. She was last year's AOSA Student of the Year. And I want to get the group's juices going on this topic by playing her video. So here is Dr. Araba Otu.
Thank you for the invitation to share my 2 cents on your talk show. I am a 2022 Ohio State College of Optometry graduate and currently completing a VA residency in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I would say earning an OD degree is absolutely worth the time, the commitment, and the money. It's only been a year since I've been out, and I absolutely love it. I am very hopeful that this will continue to be the case for a very long time. Optometry continues to evolve, and the modalities in which I can practice are many. Even more so excited about the possibility of molding something new out of my educational backgrounds. I am currently on the job market, and it can be overwhelming with all the positions available. This is a good problem to have. That's the need for the skill set I have obtained getting an OD degree is more often than not in high demand. For as long as people own a set of eyes, there will be a need for an eye doctor, and I can be there to help people in this manner. I am a little over $280K in student loans for an undergraduate degree and 2 graduate degrees. As far as compensation is concerned, I am optimistic for starting somewhere between $130 and $150K annually. So I may not be rich paying back these student loans, but I will not be destitute. Being fulfilled by what I do and being compensated makes optometry worth the time, the commitment, and the money.
outstanding.
Wow.
That was amazing. That's great.
Did we just answer the question?
Absolutely.
We're done. We're done. We promised
It
it to
strikes
be
me
short
that
and
she
sweet.
said there's all kinds of opportunity. So I think that's a super interesting part. What are your perspectives?
Well, Scott, I'll just tell you, in my role in Vision Source, one of the responsibilities I have is to help our members find associate doctors. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of positions available everywhere. And I think I was just taking notes as she was talking, and that's the one thing I double and triple underlined, which was job opportunities. I don't know that we've ever seen the market like it is now with so many choices.
And that creates a very competitive market, right? So, so our young docs and existing docs, whether just getting out of school or have been out for 10 or 15 years, have choices they might not have had 10 or 15 years ago because there are so many opportunities. They
I
are
keep waiting for a job offer to come through the comment section.
Could be.
I mean, I'll say I graduated 16 years ago, and it's a completely different world than it is now. Even with, I think, the social media, LinkedIn, the way that you can communicate with potential employers, just a few short years ago was a very different opportunity. It was engaging at meetings and going to conferences or, engaging through your alumni association. But I think now you really have the opportunity to look anywhere and to be more visible and to market yourself, which is a little bit different than when I graduated.
Yeah, Scott, the other thing that I heard that I think I have personally lost is enthusiasm. Like, there was so much enthusiasm in her voice. She was so excited about the profession that she had chosen. And almost the 200 and I think it was 280,000 in debt just sort of rolled off her tongue, when normally that would cause me to gasp. I think she's seeing so much opportunity that it doesn't seem to matter. Now, it is real money and it does matter, but just that enthusiasm was refreshing to me.
Since you looked like you were going to say something.
Well, no, I definitely think opportunity is what makes the profession worth it. But I think what is going to sustain, especially that new generation, is knowing what to do with those opportunities, or knowing where the opportunities exist, knowing when to switch up and get a different opportunity. I think that if we look at like the opposite end of it, if people are feeling like maybe their investment wasn't worth it, you have to really look at like, what was your plan going into it? What have you invested into your strategy? What are you doing to make this profession worthwhile? What are you pouring into it, so that it's worthwhile for all of us?
And, as I said, that's so true. And Mick, what you said about the 280,000, spot on. She was very comfortable with that. What I find interesting is, what is the definition of opportunity? An opportunity could be a job listing. Someone could call that opportunities, and there's plenty of job listings. There's a lot of businesses out there that need optometrists. There's no question about it. There's no area where you have to worry about getting a job. It's almost picking which job you want today. So it's a quite a different twist. But then, and what I'd like to talk about on the show today is, what is the definition of opportunity? Opportunity could be interviewing for a position, or opportunity could be creating a whole new dynamics, a whole new evolution of what we understand and optometrists can deliver in patient care to the public, which is something that I'm very passionate about understanding and exploring. Is it's not just about going to the 50-year-old definition of a practice anymore, right? Tomorrow's opportunity for optometrists is so much bigger than it was yesterday.
In essence, you work with some of the students, I don't know if it's at Salus PCO in the summer. Have you worked with students that go into that summer program or advised them to go do that? I can't remember the story, but what are they thinking? I was that
student going to that summer program.
You were that student. Do you have any contemporary sense of what that student's want is? She says, I'm going to be happy, right? If I won't be on the street if I make 130K.
No, I think especially when I'm advising students, when I talk to students, or they ask like, what is that one thing you wish you knew before you got into it? I think the biggest piece for me, and some of you guys can speak to it because y'all have made it to that point. Going into school, I did not plan for, what this career looked like for me 10 years down the line, let alone 20, 30, 40 years or till retirement. So I think that's what we talk a lot about, is looking at, yes, there's always a place for like private practice or subleasing, those type of things. But now we have more opportunities in terms of optometrists do not just have to build their own practice in order to make an impact. We're getting more people going into academia. We're getting more people doing residencies. There's more community type work in clinics, whether it's in hospitals, clinics, or jails, that now optometry has a spot or a place, or we can build a new growing spot in place. So a lot of times we talk about what is the longevity of the career, the sustainability of the career, and really, recognizing that the career that I had 13 years ago is definitely not the career that I had today. And I'm sure in 13 more years, my career, the way I practice and how I'm practicing is going to evolve and change as well.
Essence, what are the aspirations of most first-year students? Is it to be an optometrist as a business owner, or an optometrist strictly as, doing exams? Because I think if they understand the business side of it, the opportunities are even far greater than they would expect.
No, I think a lot of people want to do the business piece, but what we hear a lot is that we leave school kind of ill prepared for that business side. So if they could get more of that in billing and coding and just practice management, that they would do it. And then I think to the other side of it, it's not just like the check and eyes, so to speak. It's they want to serve, and they want to serve in their communities, and they want to serve the underserved, and they want to serve abroad, and they want to give back to places that are very personal to them. So those are like the top two I hear a lot of, or when we're grading scholarship essays and things like that. It is that willingness to wanting to go to kind of uncharted territory in optometry, so to speak, kind of stepping out of those more concentrated areas that we all tend to practice and kind of diversifying the experience.
I think they also want to create a completely different way of life after COVID. And as they graduate, they are looking to create a practice that supports their personal life and not looking to fit their personal life into a traditional practice mode. So I think that's what makes optometry worth it now, is that you can really create what you want. If you don't want to be open Saturdays, perfect. Don't be open Saturdays. Gone is maybe the traditional one evening a week, because our patients' needs have changed. So I think that's really, you can now create the business that supports you and build an authentic business. And I think that's exciting for optometry students now. I love speaking to private practice clubs because they're excited about that. And they want to go into a practice and say, this is how I want to live my life. And I know I can do that now, where I think at 16 years out, that's a huge shift. My first job was Saturdays, evenings, and that's what you did. But I think now there's a huge shift. And I think that's really exciting for them to see that they can create a business that also allows them to have a life.
But do you think Jennifer is creating a different type of problem now?
Just because that shift is actually what's pushing the evolution of the traditional optometric relationship in the industry and in a traditional practice, right? It's actually blowing the doors off and blowing the walls out and lifting the ceiling up, saying, hey, I can do I can handle this a whole bunch of other ways now, and I can create my own way. I don't have to follow what's been done the past 50 years. And that, again, is a significant statement, the level of flexibility that's going to bring out. Now, obviously, as business owners, that creates some other dilemmas for those of us who still need traditional optometrists to come to work in a 9-to-5 job, right? So, but there's a lot of evolving going on. And yeah, it came out of COVID, but I think inherently it's also come out of the fact that we're not graduating as many ODs and MDs as the country needs, right? So we don't have the same level of support to provide the patient care. So what do we do if, on top of not graduating enough doctors, where the doctors that we are graduating want a whole different definition of how to have a relationship in the industry? Wow, that's an incredible toss.
Alan, welcome. And any thoughts before we welcome in our first guest?
I'm just warming up and listening, and this sounds great. I'm really happy. Those are great points. I came in a little too late to comment on because I'm not able to pull anything together on this topic, but this is fantastic.
Well, Alan, because you're late, we've decided you have to buy drinks for everybody who subscribed to the show tonight.
All right. A virtual drinks for everyone. I'll send you a drink emojis for everyone.
Drink tickets, right? So I want to read a comment from Steve Faith, my plus 125s are needed. As one of the APME
Yeah, right.
educators at UCal Berkeley School of Optometry, our challenge is often not the students, but the established doctors changing their old school attitudes about the traditional buy-sell process. And I see a lot of head nodding. So we're going to hold that for the next segment. Because I do think that that's why this topic is the one we wanted to bring. It's not about students necessarily. I think what I want to do before we introduce our guest is, Jay, give you a moment to sort of set some context. You and Mick have taught some classes on the, what's the future hold. And that's going to bring us to our first guest. So you want to just give us a minute on that?
Thanks so much, Scott. Really, it's funny because I had spoken with Mick in regards to creating a new course for Expo, which related to emerging trends in optometry. And Mick says, well, wait a second, you're an optical guy. Is that really what you want to say? Because it's a complete 180-degree turn from most of the things I've talked about the last 2 decades. And really it related to information that I had put together from Richard Edlow. And I was kind of like knocked back when I started looking at the numbers. And I'll throw up a couple numbers for you here. But, between 2020 and 2030, on average, we've got about 6,300 new OD graduates, about 650 new MD graduates. You got a 25% increase in exam growth. You got 30% increase in the population over 65. When I started putting these numbers together, I said, wait a second, there's more than 14 more million medical exams needed. There's only 476 more MDs to do it. We know that not all the MDs are going to be doing those exams. They're going to specialize. So only a third of those are really going to contribute. And there's another 1.4 million more cataracts that are going to be needed. And there's still only another 150 more MDs to do it. So I think much like a process that I had last year when I had my back done, I met my surgeon for 2 seconds. After that, I never saw him again. That's how it's going to be with cataract surgeons and surgeons of all types. The ODs are going to have to lift up and take over all the work for the MDs. They're just going to be in surgery, right? So if the ODs have that opportunity to lift up their game, they could specialize, they could do all kinds of amazing things with their career. Then the question is, who's going to fill in for the lower level OD work, right? And that gives an opportunity for more people to come up. So one of my questions that I'd love to hear from Marge and Howard, who are joining us, and the rest of us, is what are your thoughts on how are we going to continue to provide the level of care we provide when we don't have enough ODs and don't have enough MDs to actually support the country? Hey, Marge.
Hi.
Marge.
Folks,
Marge.
it's Marge Axelrad. She's Senior VP and Editorial Director of Vision Monday and VMAIL from Jobson Optical Group. And she is an industry authentic. Welcome as our first guest, Marge.
I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be your first guest. Thank you.
You're one ahead of Howard. How bad can it be?
I mean, I don't think that's ever happened. No. And it's a pleasure to be with you. Each of you are amazing. Jay just put it so interestingly about, a kind of an unanswerable question, I think. So maybe, Scott, why don't you ask me what you were going to, and then I'll try to fake my way around to answer Jay's.
Well, you have such an industry perspective that I guess I'd like for you to riff a little bit and let this, join the conversation, encourage our participants and our watchers, our listeners to sort of think a little bit differently about this topic. I think you have a point of view about whether or not the OD degree is worth the investment right now.
Oh, I definitely do. In addition to, spending a lot of time covering the industry and the field of optometry, I happen to be on the board of the SUNY Optometric College in New York's foundation for about 10 years. And it's very interesting to hear the discussion about the number of applicants and trying to keep the great academic credentials of that particular college. It's not the only great college, of course, but it's a great one. Trying to keep the academic caliber high, attract people to come to college in Manhattan and New York City. SUNY just happened to forge a new relationship with SUNY's upstate branch, and as a way of trying to build knowledge about optometry as a career and a profession to the upstate New York region, which is suffering an even more serious shortage than they are in the bigger cities. So, I think I'm attuned to the issues, and I couldn't agree more with the student and with what everything's been said so far. I think there are nothing but upside opportunities for people who want to practice optometry in whatever way they want and to build the kind of lives and professional lives that they want. And I think that the degree is well worth it. I think the challenge is selling the idea of optometry as a healthcare profession to future students and to future supporters in the healthcare space who need to recognize optometry's value. I think that's what we hear all the time, whether it's from industry or whether it's from retail suppliers. All of us who are among the 3 O's and inside this business understand the value, don't have to be sold on the value of vision, but there are millions of people and millions of decision makers who still don't know the value of eye care and comprehensive exams and what they mean for people who are lucky enough to be able to afford the health care that they buy for themselves, or for those who've never had access to eye care. And, it's kind of a crime that they can't get to see the kinds of doctors that they need and the care that they need.
What?
Well,
Oh, that was well said. I think when to ask a question to the question, when there is a market with an unmet need,
Yeah.
what happens? Well, I mean, it's pretty, a couple things happen. First of all, that need gets filled somehow. And that need in our field, I see being filled in two different ways. It's creating a need for, maybe not a need, but, and people may not love this comment, but we are trying to be authentic here. It's creating an opportunity for more people to open up optometry schools and graduate more ODs. And there's some people who feel good about that and some people don't. On the other hand, it's also creating an opportunity for us to expand our scope of practice, because the state legislatures that vote on these things know they need more providers. And when push comes to shove in those back rooms where they're hearing ophthalmology say one thing about us and optometry but saying another thing, they're hopefully choosing the options that are in the best interest of their population. So we're seeing more and more states now get better and better therapeutic laws. So far, that's how I see that gap being filled.
Mm.
Yeah, and Alan, that's an interesting comment, because I hear some moaning about too many optometry schools, yet at the same time we hear we can't fill positions.
Exactly.
So we've seen this big movement toward really a rapid opening of, I would say, the last 10 years. When I was in school in the 90s, I think we had 16. We're probably double that now. But yet there's still a big giant demand for optometrists in all types of practice settings. So I think about and back to Steve's comment in the chat about sort of the old established doctors thinking. I think there's still a lot of that, but the reality is when we step back and look, there is an enormous need that continues to be filled. So this idea that we have too many optometry schools, I think it's fun to say, and it feels good with your old grouchy guy like me, but I think in reality, we really need them.
Yeah, and I also think one thing I've learned at SUNY is, and this speaks to what Essence was talking about and what Jennifer was saying, there are so many ways to be involved in your career if you study optometry. You can pursue research. You can pursue specialties today. Yes, you can practice remotely and decide how you want to structure your time during the course of a week. So I think that the big gap is in trying to get the people who are serving patients now better connected with what the schools are actually creating, the kinds of opportunities they're offering students, and then this same new attitude among young people today about how they want to pursue their career. There are some gaps there. And I think, it's incumbent upon people to work together to create new messaging about optometry within the schools, within the curriculums, but also to the people who are looking to hire. Because that's one thing I do hear from a lot of the bigger groups that are facing shortages and trying to create and foster relationships that let young optometrists know that they can practice the way they want, instead of into some abstract idea of what it is.
Marge, while we still have you, David Friedfeld from Clear Vision points out that 250 plus thousand at 6+% is going to take 12 years controlling expenses. And so you hear these needs. I also see a comment from Scott Morris at Morris Consulting saying, docs need to do efficiency training, right? It's about how effective you are with your time using technology. It feels like those docs that are looking, you're talking to organizations, but you're also talking to docs that are looking, they need to step it up to be able to bring, right? They're complaining they don't have enough docs to fill positions, but are they building efficient practices? You through your Vision Monday summit every, February or March in New York, bring the topic of technology. What would be your message for the docs in practice that need to find a way to cultivate these highly expensed young people into their practices?
Well, I think if you don't have a modern practice just for your own sake, you're behind your own 8 ball, even if you've been practicing for 25 years. And I think it's very, very important in order to teach students what they need to know and to create practices that are going to work and endure and survive in a very different competitive atmosphere than existed even 8 years ago. Yep. You have to do this. It's a challenge, but you have to do it. I think there's a learning that needs to happen post college. It's almost like a structured learning that long-term practices need to discover about what is being taught and where the gaps are, because I think there are kind of a lot of gaps.
It's interesting, Marge. When I was teaching at the Houston College of Optometry and did adjunct work there, we talked about how do we coordinate those post-grad courses to really teach people exactly what you're talking about, and so spot on with that. What takes place after they get the license? I always said docs have 6 weeks between the time they finish and the time they get the license. There should be a crash course in that 6 weeks to really address true needs moving forward. But at the end of the day, like one of my biggest focuses right now is saying, okay, well, if this forecast is right, if this information is correct, and we are short bodies, then no matter what we do, no matter how efficient we are, we're short human beings. Mm-hmm. If we're short human beings, how do we fill the gap? Because we're going to go 3 days to 3 weeks to 3 months to 6 months to wait to get an eye exam. How do we fill that gap?
There's also another axis on this supply and demand graph we're talking about, and that's a quality access. I know that, and I've heard rumblings, I don't have any personal knowledge of this, but the quality of the candidates, it's limited, that are applying is limited. So you can open up more and more optometry schools, but if the same level of candidate is applying and graduating, where are we really going as a profession? And that's, you're going to have to fill these classes with people that don't have the same academic standards and qualities as other people. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think it's just got to be, I think it's just incumbent on those colleges to be held with by their peers to certain kinds of quality standards. And then I think also maybe in terms of how the services are defined that optometrists are trained to provide, there needs to be a better communication. I'm always a communication person. So I sometimes think that the worst thing is, too high expectations and too low expectations. So I think that there has to be honest discussions about the opportunities and different needs of what kinds of things optometrists can provide, whether it's refractions, comprehensive exams. Not everyone who graduates can be a specialist, but I think that somehow has got to be solved in terms of communicating to the people that are hiring or to what the opportunities are in the real world to bridge that gap.
Marge, I don't know. Should the messaging be changed to optometrists to help them understand the real opportunity?
Yes.
The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics said the mean annual wage of an optometrist is $133,000. All of us on this call know many, 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 many ODs that make 2 and 3 times that.
Yes.
Because of that business opportunity that's really not taught in the schools.
No, and I think also even for people who believe in the optimum business opportunity. I think sometimes people pull their punches and they don't describe things clearly. I think they describe things idealistically. And I hear it when I talk to companies about what they're doing. I don't know how it comes across to a 22-year-old who's got $250,000 worth of debt. Okay. But I do think there definitely needs to be a new way of communicating that ties into the business communicating better about itself and showing value, and then communicating to the career paths that optometrists can choose to pursue. So I agree, Ed. Yeah.
Yeah, David pointed out on the chat too, this issue of, the one of the big challenges is everybody wants to go practice in the city. So not only, Alan brought up the point about the quality of care, but also just this new generation of ODs seem to want to be more metropolitan oriented, and so we have all this rural need that goes unleft, and unfortunately, a lot of great rural practices end up shuttering because they don't have buyers.
It's
and
true.
So that's a big challenge. And so I got to thinking how smart David is, and then I read his next chat, and he said Dr. Glazier is spot on. I thought, well, he's not.
Well, I don't know if David started drinking again. I don't know. I mean, anybody that would say Glazier's spot on, I have an issue with it.
Yeah. I would say master of the obvious.
Marge?
Yes.
Thank you very much for participating. It probably feels quick.
It
but
does feel quick, but it's a wonderful topic, and I think the way you phrased it is great. So.
Well, we hope that you'll be a regular contributor. We appreciate what you've done for our industry, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you, Marge.
Thank you very much. Bye.
You're the best.
So as Marge leaves the stream, I want to bring up a point that relates to all this from her sister publication at Jobson Review of Optometry, which in December always publishes our wage data. And Ed, you brought up this idea that we can go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and see 135,000, but their survey showed that the average OD was only making 173. In fact, it's down from 180 in 2021. Now, self-employed was 285 and employed was 142. So we do have that range. Independent contractors who make 100,000. I'm starting to think that what's going on is that people are self-selecting into locations, as we just talked about, and to wages that make them feel the way Arba talked about it, which is I'm not going to be destitute. I'm just going to do what makes me feel right. I heard you say that, Essence. Is that kind of what we're dealing with? Is that some of this is shaking out by how people choose to use the OD degree in their lives?
Oh, I was really kind of moved what Dave said in there, because the reality is if we all go to the top 10 cities of the United States, that's only 10% of the population that we're serving, living amongst, and treating. And then it's like, what happens in these rural type of areas? I live in Dallas, it's a whole metroplex, but there are zip codes, pockets of places that are rural, even within our metropolitan city. Just 15 minutes outside, there are areas where we don't have a lot of practices. And I worked in a practice where every day I was seeing patients who've never had an eye exam. And then I think the part that comes up is that the newer generation would not be opposed to going to some of these more rural areas, but we right now lack that flexibility as optometrists with our licensure to do like nurses and to travel. I think that if we had more of the flexibility to choose to go to these remote places, certain days of the week or on the weekend, we would feel a need, and that we wouldn't have a lot of practices that have to close. If we didn't have a lot of corporate places just building practices for the sake of building them and having these ghost stores and areas where they're like, if we build it, it will come, but you built it and we're not coming. We are staying, kind of right where we are. So there's some other pieces that are kind of beyond us that we need to rally together to give ourselves a little bit more flexibility and fluidity to get into just the places that we can serve, but also have the ability to escape away to the city and to the nightlife that we also desire.
Jennifer, you hired a new OD or two, didn't you?
We had two associates.
How do you do it financially?
Well, finding them was not the worst, but yes. But building a practice, knowing that we were so booked and needed the help, and also having me willing to step back a little bit and to relinquish some of that patient population. But I will say, I'm in Fairfield County, Connecticut, which, Jay knows. We're not rural, right, Jay? I mean, it's not a rural community, but friends of mine in Fairfield County have had trouble finding associates, and it is an unbelievable place to live. It's beautiful. We're on the beach. We're on the coast. I'm 45 minutes from Grand Central, and we can't get ODs here either. So it's just an interesting dichotomy of where people are going. We're between SUNY and NECO. We're right in the middle. And still having issues, friends of mine finding people to come. But I agree with you, Essence. It is a challenge too if you're not in the state. If you're in New York and you don't have a Connecticut license, which is not hard to get, but it's just one more thing to do to maybe split the difference between those two. So
I wanted to. I'm sorry, Jay. You want to go?
Yeah, you should be sorry, Alan. Don't ever interrupt me.
All right, we're gonna get authentic now. I can tell.
Yeah, we're getting there. First of all, having licenses that cross state boundaries, extraordinary. I mean, really extraordinary. That's a home run if I ever heard one. At the end of, but when we think about it, it's coming out of school. Our folks, ODs are going to work for the commercial big box retailers. Why? Because poof, we're hired and we're paying our bills. So there's a need for that. And going into marketplaces where traditional practice couldn't even afford to go spend $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to open up a place, right? Because that person's going to starve for 5 or 6 or 7 years, right? They're not going to get to that $350,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year revenue for a couple of years instead of 1 year. So the only people who could go into that other marketplace would be a big box retailer in that regard. And so our ODs will go to work maybe in that smaller town with smaller demand, where there's a big box retailer, Walmart or Target, whatever the case may be. So, at the end of the day, and I know I'm harping on this, it still comes back to there aren't enough of us.
I think speaking of these topics, we've got somebody that's jumped in the stream here.
Howard's on board.
Howard. Dr. Howard Purcell, the second most important guest of the first show of the Authentics. The president and CEO of the New England College of Optometry joins us. Welcome, Dr. Purcell.
What's up, Authentics? Good to see you all.
All right.
I have to admit, I am madly in love with Marge Axelrad. I'm going to say this publicly. I'm happy and comfortable to be her backup, and she is always amazing. So good to see you all. Happy to join this very interesting conversation.
Howard, how do we get students to go to rural optometry practices and make their lives?
Well, I think some of you know how I feel about this. We have to bring the education to them. We have 30 plus states that don't have optometry schools, and we're asking amazing people who might have families, who may have obligations, to pack their bags and move somewhere. So that was a lob question for me. We need to bring that education to them. We need to let them train clinically, locally, so we have a better chance of them staying locally. And to me, that's the best opportunity we have. It's really interesting to hear you guys talk about these issues, because I will tell you, many organizations in our profession don't agree that we don't have enough optometrists. They will admit that we don't have optometrists in areas we need them, but they're not prepared yet to admit we don't have enough optometrists. So we're in a very interesting time. I think we need to look at the data. I love that you're bringing some of the data to the table. It's important. And we have to be a little more creative in the way we deliver. I thought Mick, and I love Mick, he's a sharp guy, really smart individual. I just want to say, though, that when we look at the number of schools, if we just keep adding schools, we need amazing faculty. Right now, we have people who commit to making less money to train the future of our profession. There's not a ton of those out there. So when we talk about more schools, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, we need to make sure we have the people. And if we can deliver education in different ways, pool our resources together as academic institutions, I think that helps to solve it.
Howard, you have done some unique things with tuition assurances from industry. You've also got some data about what's going on in Massachusetts in terms of how the graduates pay for their, do they sufficiently pay for their education? Could you give us a little bit of that as feed so we can let the team, the Authentics, chew on it a bit?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple things that I think you'll enjoy chewing on. Number one, I believe there are two key issues we have. First of all, let me start and say, optometric education is worth it 1,000%. You didn't ask me, but I'm just going to say it. It is absolutely worth it. But we have to keep in mind there are challenges, and we need people like you and the people who listen to you, we need your help. We have two big issues. One is debt. That was clear. Dr. Otu was amazing. And I agree that she sort of casually talked about her debt. We can't have that kind of debt. We have to address it. And there's ways to address it. And then applicant pool, we've already started to address that. But let me share with you why this is a super simple math problem that even Jay Binkowitz can follow. So here's how it goes. Here's how it goes. Your highest, the most, your highest cost item or your faculty. They're amazing. We want to keep paying them in every way we can because they dedicate so much to our profession. Your revenue primarily, and I'm speaking of NECO, but because I can only speak of NECO, but I'm telling you, this is not just at NECO. Our primary revenue source is tuition. So if your faculty expect and want and deserve to get maybe a minimum of 3%, 3.5%, maybe 4% raise, then you have to increase tuition 3.5% a year. It's a very, very simple math problem. We cannot continue to increase tuition 3.5% a year and continue to be viable. That is not sustainable. And therefore, thank you to Scott for mentioning something we call sponsored pathways, which says, if you want to hire our students, your amazing industry people, help them pay for their education. And by the way, they're stepping up because of what you've already mentioned, supply and demand right now. They're desperate for doctors. Great. If you're going to hire our doctors, hire them, but help offset some of their costs. By the way, $45,000 a year for a big employer, and thank you to our amazing big employers for participating in this, is not that much money. They can manage it. They're losing that much every month when they don't have an optometrist in their office. So I don't feel bad asking. And by the way, 6 of them this year are going to participate in sponsored pathways. And just last year at NECO alone, and now other schools are participating, we offset over $1 million in costs just in our first year with just 3 companies. So it's critical. Mick represents a company right here who's participating, and I thank him for it. For our graduates to have an opportunity to join a Vision Source practice is amazing, and to help offset their costs to do that so they're not in the $200,000 debt is incredible. So encourage our industry to continue supporting. And on the other side of when it comes to our applicant pool, encourage our great doctors to talk about people who are sitting in their chairs every day who pull that phoropter up and want to see or ask a question about what you're seeing through that slit lamp. Tell them about optometry. Tell them about this amazing profession. And those things will also help us to address what are 2 very key issues.
Howard, how are we expanding feeding the machine? Right. So listen, there's no question there's a job waiting for anybody who graduates. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. And some folks really have the pick of the litter, right? They can really decide where they want to go, what they want to do, how they want to practice. But at the end of the day, it's how are we feeding the machine to have more graduates, really, and that's really where I'm sitting back saying, we need more ODs. We need more ODs. It's not just about what can they do. From my perspective, an OD is worth more today than they've ever been worth before. And a lot of people will hate me for saying that because the truth is ODs are worth a lot. We can't exist without them, but we need more of them. How are we going to feed the machine?
Hey, I feel like I could talk anybody into optometry. It's the most amazing profession there is. You're going to change people's lives every day. You're going to have a great work-life balance. You're going to make a 6-figure salary walking out of school, and you're hopefully going to give back. You have a gift that enables you to give back. But you're absolutely right. We have to feed the funnel. Right now, you have Optometry Gives Me Life, which is a wonderful campaign. By the way, the schools and colleges ante up. Every school pays for that campaign based on the number of students you have. The industry helps support it. Honestly, with all my heart, I love the program, but it's an incremental piece to what we need. We need something more transformational. We need to fish in new ponds. Everybody's fishing in the same place. Let's go to places that don't have optometry schools. Let's go to places that are underserved. Let's recruit more Black and Latinos in. It's Juneteenth. We celebrate that today. We need to be talking about making sure we continue to diversify our profession, that all are welcome to optometry, and that we show them that path. We have to fish in new places. When you add new schools, great. What you hope is they will incrementally recruit and do that. But what it seems, with all due respect to my colleagues, is they're just fishing at the same ponds for us, and we've got to go to other places. And I think we can do that if we're willing to invest. And I don't know what's any more important. And think about any of you and where you play in this industry. If we don't have great optometrists coming out that are going to be able to fill the gaps of the wonderful things all of you do, then we're in trouble. So we all have something at stake. And companies have anteed up. There's great companies out there supporting this, more need to, and each of us individually needs to play our role. And by the way, I get it. Some people have not had the best ride in optometry, but if you ever have a bad day in optometry school, I think I heard someone mention this earlier, I don't remember who it was, come to an optometry school and spend a half a day with a group of students. They are so excited about this profession. They are going to be the greatest they're going to be the next Jen Stewart. They're going to be the greatest optometrists that ever lived. And it is amazingly inspiring to be around them. So I invite you, and I'm sure all of my colleagues would invite any of you to come and visit and see what's going on. We have incredible students. Don't let people tell you we're not getting high quality students. They're amazing. And what they have to go through in the 4-year program today is not, I'll look at some of my older colleagues. I have a lot of young colleagues here, but it wasn't even what you went through, what they have to do today, because the amazing scope, broadening of our scope of practice, which is incredible, but the pressure that puts on our faculty and our students is immense. So support them. Do what Jen Stewart does, and others of you, what I know Alan Glazer does. I know Essence does, spends a lot of time, Jay and Mick. You guys get out there and Ed, and you support the profession and you support optometry. We really, really need that. And I hope Authentics will continue to get into the issue of academics and schools and colleges and how we continue to work together. We can't do it without the industry support. We can't do it without leaders like your support. We can't do it alone. I promise you. And if anybody's telling you we can, they're lying to you.
So
Howard, I got a question.
Folks that we're not filling the funnel, like you said, as quickly and as much as possible. Is there an opportunity? Is there a consideration we should have to create another degree? Some folks that can have maybe to a lesser degree, go to optometry school, but to a lesser type of degree where they get out sooner. They have a shorter education. They have a less expensive education. They can't do everything an optometrist can do, but they can actually back them up. They become nurse practitioners, physician assistants to optometrists in order to fill the fact that we're not going to have enough bodies.
Yeah. I love you. You know that, Jay, but on that one, I'm not going to align with you there. And we all are entitled to our opinion on it. I want to preserve what optometry is about and who we are. And I think if we create another category, as we're even seeing with physicians assistants and physicians now, there's even becoming some animosity. In the end, we've got to deliver on the people we need to care for. And one issue perhaps hasn't come up here yet that needs to is telehealth. I can tell you, and you all know this, that these big companies who are not able to hire doctors now are finding alternative routes. And some of that is through telehealth and telemedicine. And some of us love it. Some of us hate it. Some of us are somewhere in the middle saying we're carefully watching. We need to be involved. We need to be validating. And I think that's probably a good thing. But keep that in mind. They'd rather have doctors, but if they don't, they're going to find alternatives. So I would rather see us continue to produce great doctors. We have accelerated programs now that several of the schools offer for amazing students who perhaps have master's degrees or OD degrees in other countries. This could help accelerate things. So it's an option for me. It's a little further down the list option because it gets things very complicated when it comes to roles and responsibilities, and perhaps more importantly, the responsibility and the risks that you're taking as a doctor.
Now, Jay brings up an interesting point, and here's where we're going to get really authentic because, optometry has elevated itself into this, what I was talking about earlier, this market gap, this need, where we filled what the physicians didn't want to do. Any profession out there, Jay, whether it's opticians, ophthalmic techs, they're welcome to go through the legislative process and elevate their profession, and in the process try and fill those gaps. And that might be what happens if depending on how the market goes. So I don't think anyone has to be convinced that that's a direction that might happen. And, whether it's a good direction or bad direction, it's not for me to say. I just think that this program that Howard's talking about, it's been around forever. It's what the military has been doing forever. It's shocking to me that just now this is becoming a thing. I think this is a really, really powerful, great path for the future of this profession, not only to graduate more ODs of higher quality, but to also get them into the parts of the country for a while that really need that service and fill those gaps so that we can maintain our role as primary eye care, as the primary eye care doctors.
Yeah. Howard, you're on record as finding the OD degree worth the time and money. You had a little bit of data I want you to share on the way out here about the ability to repay. Did you not share that with me? There's something about you filed data with the state, and optometry has as good of a chance of the ability to repay as any. I can't remember the details.
Yes, no. So what happens in Massachusetts is we have so many academic institutions, we tend to be a little further out in terms of some new changes and additions. So what we now have to report on is a ratio. And I think this is what you were referring to, Scott. And that ratio is after 5 years post-graduation, what is the average salary? And that divided by essentially what it cost you to go to optometry school. And you come up with a ratio. Optometry fares very well right now today when you look at that. Because by the way, let me just ground ourselves for a minute. Right down the street from me here at Boston University, $60,000 to go to undergraduate. So, 45 is a lot. I'm giving you an average. It's about 45 for us right now. It's too much. We can't get to 60. But right now, our ratios look good. By the way, something like opticianry, the ratio looks horrible when you start to look at it. It's why many of us are having such a difficult time finding opticians, particularly in licensed states where you need to have them. So this ratio is a great thing because it enables the buyer, the student, to understand a little bit better. My fear is this is not sustainable. We're okay right now. Most of the schools and colleges are actually doing pretty well at the moment. They should be doing pretty well at the moment. And, we've grown our endowment. Good things have happened to the college. But what I have to look at, as all of you do as business people, is, well, I want to leave this college in a better place than I found it. And when I look out 5 to 10 years, if I continue increasing my tuition at a similar rate to what I want to give my faculty, which I'd rather give my faculty 5 and 6% raises, believe me, but we're not, the math doesn't work. It's not sustainable. So we have to do other things. I would love to see a situation where 50% of our students get their tuition paid for who are going to optometry school. That would be a nice goal to set for ourselves. We're setting that at NECO and trying to see if we can make that happen. At least get half of it paid for because there's such a demand. And by the way, the comment was made, this is not a new idea. I'm totally with you. The GI Bill, for those old enough to remember, but why this worked is not any genius. It's supply and demand. You guys brought it up earlier. When you have a supply and demand ratio working the way it works right now, you're in a very good position to say, okay, great. You want these people. I know you do. Help them. This is their biggest issue. Debt is their biggest challenge. They worry about it. It impacts their performance. We didn't get to talk much today about national board performances, things like that. That's a subject you guys should talk about. It's an important one. We all need to help support that. But I appreciate that you even decided, at least on your first show, which is amazing, to talk about this subject, because again, I think it does impact on everyone. We need to have more dialogue about it. Last thing I'll just say about this is we put on the Industry Collaborative every year. It's an opportunity to get the industry together and the media together and our employers together and have them honest. I can't use authentic anymore. You guys own that one now, but have some honest discussion about what's going on. And it's been incredibly productive. And I thank everyone who has participated in that. I love you guys.
Friends, that's Dr. Howard Purcell.
Thanks, Howard.
Bye,
Howard. Thank you.
Your commitment to this profession is as high as anybody we know, Howard, and we're really grateful for you being here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for everything you do, Howard. Hey, I want to, Scott, I want to go back for 1 second. I need the numbers people here, the top 3 on Hollywood Squares here, to let me know, you talked about the mean being around, 170, 180. Is the mean the number we need to be looking at, or the median, which is more age adjusted from what I understand? Because I know the median is somewhere around 130K. But I'm not telling you that. I would think that might be a better number to go by.
Well, I mean, I don't know what that is. I didn't see it in the Review of Optometry article, but what's interesting is that 2023, Medscape Physician Compensation Report deals with 250K primary care and 350K specialties, give or take. And I agree the median's right, but there's some trends that are really worrisome, right? We've got at ICO, where I'm on the board of trustees and a graduate, we've got 72%, women in the entering class, but the pay gap between men and women is really becoming substantially worse. So I guess it's a matter of which number makes you feel better about justifying the tuition, but isn't there a salary concern overall in the profession?
My big question is who's answering that? That's always what I wonder.
Yeah, there's like 700 respondents.
Yeah, I always tell students whenever they ask, I said, I will tell you, I've never filled out a survey on my salary. And, to take that with a grain of salt, because for every one complainer I see on maybe a Facebook group or somewhere else, I can give you 3 of my friends who are doing really well, who just don't publicize that. So
Yep.
I think also knowing that that comes with, an asterisk of what's the size of the people who are responding, so I always take that information. I mean, when I was in college, I lived and died by that. And I thought, if I made that my goal, this is why I'm going to do this career because of this. But I think also knowing that there's so many of our colleagues who are super successful and they are so quiet and under the radar that you wouldn't even know they exist, but they are absolutely killing it. And what I tell students and Howard, yes, I love to speak to students. I welcome every opportunity I have to educate them, but to also hear from them and be excited about optometry again, because I will say it's given me more than I could ever imagine. But I tell them I never had the time to do that stuff when I was seeing patients because I was too busy. So the people that we're often hearing from are the people who are not the ones who you should be hearing from. So I always caution students to not be discouraged or dissuaded by that, but to have a realistic approach to their first job or their dream career, and to know that really they can attain a lot more than they might see in some of these publications.
The AOA used to publish data. I haven't seen it in a couple of years, so I don't know whether they stopped doing that survey but because they used to do retail, private practice. I don't know. Has anybody seen that?
Review of Optometry's 2022, December 2022 survey had that. And I don't have it at my fingertips, but we certainly can post it as a comment to our session for those that watch the recorded session and take a look at it to, get a feel. I do think that it's important we think about as we get to the end. We've sort of made a guarantee. It was Ed's idea to say we're going to guarantee in an hour or less. So many things that we could go on forever. What's the takeaway? As somebody who owns an eye care business, it's not an OD that is somehow in the supply chain, or somebody who is, thinking about supporting an optometry college, or, a new doc, or even a prospective student. What's the takeaway? Essence, you've driven as many students to the profession as possible. Let's start with you and let's go around the horn. What is the takeaway? What do you want to see somebody do?
Yeah, I think we are always looking for a unifying force. And then the question is, who is it? And I think that in a way, instead of people looking for one unifier, Howard just came representing NECO. They're doing great things there. There are other schools that are doing great things. And there are other places where we need areas of improvement. So I would just encourage every school, every colleague, every eye care professional to look at what someone else is doing and see how you can replicate that in your own backyard. How can you do that little thing and make an impact so that we're all kind of moving forward in the same way, instead of watching, NECO give out scholarships and NECO's doing this and NECO's doing that. You too can also do that as well. Or Essence and Jennifer are talking to all the students. There are plenty of students that would love to be talked to, or, ooh, I wish I could do better at private practice. Hey, you guys, look at all of these great private practice, corporate optometrists. Reach out. If everyone picks that one area of improvement, I think collectively we can see bigger steps forward.
In essence, we can take that to the next level too. For the companies that depend on optometrists to thrive out there, think about these programs. Think about going to these schools and offering up what you can offer so that they can graduate doctors at the highest level of their educations to serve your companies. These are investments that'll pay direct dividends to you in a short period of time. So please consider donating to the schools and colleges. And I think we'll find that's one of the paths that'll get us where we need to go.
I think Scott Howard said two things that resonated with me. One is this idea of bringing the education to the people, because it made me think about the fact that we've got this rural practice need, but yet we're dragging everybody to the city to educate them. And then once they get to the city, they get settled, they marry people that end up taking them somewhere else, or maybe they stay in the area. I rarely get phone calls from colleagues that are looking for an associate in a big city where there's an optometry school, right? So this idea of how do we get the education, whether that be online, virtual, I know a controversial topic, but how do we get the education to the people? The other thing he touched on, and I really hope we tackle this, and this is on one of these live streams, and that's remote optometry. I think there is really an opportunity there for us. I know it's highly controversial, but remote optometry could be the answer to a lot of this rural practice needs. So I particularly love Howard's forward-thinking approach to what education is contributing to the profession.
You know, it's so interesting, and I agree with so much of what's said tonight. But at the end of the day, it's about a body count. You still need the right number of human beings to take care of the right number of human beings. And there are CPOs out there and opticians out there. They're already doing the refractions. They're already doing all the workups, getting to the point where they just hand the patient off to the optometrist to do, all the medical, the comprehensive care. For years, MDs held back ODs, ODs held back opticians. But at the end of the day, everybody elevates. The MDs don't have time to do care anymore. They're just going to be doing surgery. So, I mean, the ODs have to fill in where the MDs left off, which is going to elevate ODs to a whole nother level and give more opportunities where an OD could literally just do dry eye or just do glaucoma and not do anything else. They don't even have to see another type of patient, which is why I think opportunity for ODs is extraordinary. And at the same token, the CPOs and ABO, the opticians out there are going to elevate their game so that they could fill in. They're already doing the refractions. They're just not getting really the credit for it. I think the entire industry has to elevate their game. It has no choice because we don't have enough bodies. For optometrists to be able to see the volume of patients America has to offer, there have to be more people involved.
Any other thoughts?
I really think we need to change the messaging so that prospective students for schools understand the business aspects of optometry versus purely clinical. Because in my past career, I tried to go to the schools and tried to even fund business education, but for some reason no one was really interested and said we didn't have time in the curriculum. But I certainly think if someone understood they could make $200,000 or $300,000 practicing optometry, that would change their perspective.
Well, listen, at ICO, under the lead of Dean Dr. Stephanie Mesner, they've just changed practice management to practice preparedness. And it's an entire shift using input by a number of real thoughtful business people on the board of trustees. I think the schools are doing it, but yeah, it's going to take a while for them to get there.
Yep.
Any final other comments?
I would just say, if you're unsure what the future looks like, volunteer to speak for a private practice club. Give your time to your optometry school. It is unbelievably motivating. For anyone who has a question of the caliber of the students currently, speak to them, give your time, and get back involved with your school. I'm involved so much at NECO, and when Howard asked me to do something, I can't help but say yes. So, but I'm honored. I teach a sports vision elective. It's one of two, I think, in the country. So the opportunities that we have to give to these students are things that we didn't have when we were there. But being involved with them and being around them really helps you feel better about the people who are coming out and what's going to happen to our profession.
Scott, I have to tell you, I really had my reservations about us all putting this together because of the natural level of lack of social skills that this group has. Most
Mirroring.
Antisocial, especially Alan Glazier.
Mirroring.
But to that extent, Scott, I can't thank you enough for the amazing amount of work you did in helping us pull this together. And really taking the lead role, albeit unpaid, but you got to thank you for it. And I think that's a very big thing we want folks to know. We're not being paid to do this. We're not being sponsored by a company. We're not asking for any money. We just really feel a drive, a sincere motivation to bring topics to the industry that need to be discussed. And even if they're difficult topics, and even if they're controversial, and even if we disagree, it doesn't matter. We need to get it out there. We need to have these talks. And really, that was the essence of creating the Authentics, despite the Godfather logo we came up with. We all think is outstanding. Scott, thank you again for everything you've done.
Scott.
Well, listen, I don't think any of us dreamed that this good of a conversation could have happened. We've got Houston College of Optometry 25 future grad Lauren Price saying, do you think schools will start to concentrate on their education, medical versus family practice versus broad scope? This is the kind of conversation that we wanted, where that kind of question's asked. We don't know. But boy, did we have some great guests as well. Let's make sure to, again, thank Marge and Howard
Absolutely.
Let's finish with this. We want to continue to serve people, right? There's all kinds of you out there that are authentic. There's all kinds of people out there that are like, why are you people feeling you're authentic? And what's unique about this group, this collective, is that every one of these people is wanting to give of their time. There's no money involved here. This is trying to give back. So for those of you that have posted thoughts or comments, if you have ideas next time around, post it in our YouTube comment section, Facebook, LinkedIn. Next time we'll have enough subscribers to be on LinkedIn as well. Hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, then you'll get notifications of our next shows. Friends, here's your authenticity. And I think that's a wrap. Anybody want to say goodbye one last time?
Nope.
Goodbye one last time.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you.
See you next month.